welcome to everyone here today. Hendrik, Sam, and Sydney, it is a pleasure to speak with you again. It's been a pleasure working with you as we were together for one of the first evaluations we did for the Impact Evaluation Lab. And that was, of course, with your firm, Advanced Global Capital.
Yeah, thank you very much, Robin. Thank you for having us. My name is Hendrik. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Advanced Global Capital, and I'm joined by Sam Miller-Hicks, who's our Chief Impact Officer, and Sydney Roper, who works in our Marketing and Impact Evaluations Department. AGC was founded about 11 years ago, or 11 or 12 years ago, and really the mission that we set out to achieve was to provide working capital to small and medium-sized businesses around the world. I'm going to use the acronym SME a few times. So if you hear me use that, what I mean is small and medium-sized enterprises. And the focus of our fund is really to provide working capital, which means short-dated loans to these companies in emerging and underserved markets. The reason we do this, or the way that we thought about things, was that we believe that private capital can be a force for good, and it's a way to reduce inequality and a way to reduce poverty if we can generate sustained economic growth. So that was really the background or the thesis that we set out from when we launched the fund. Initially, we set the business up under the family office of Janet McKinley, which is called Money in Motion. And for about 2 years, we really trialed the concept using her personal balance sheet. And once we'd settled on what we felt was a scalable business model, we launched the fund in 2015 to external investors.
Tell us, specifically, what is the theory of change behind the work that you're doing? Lots of people have an intention to allocate capital for good in a way that you've articulated broadly. But I do think that Advanced Global Capital has a specific mission that's different and differentiated, and maybe you could help us understand that.
Yeah. So it's very interesting. I mean, if you go and look at what is referred to as the missing middle today, there's a missing middle number that gets quoted of $5.7 trillion. If you dive into that, what is the missing middle? The missing middle is not companies that are being financed by microfinance institutions. So it's not consumer finance, and it's not small businesses being financed by banks. These are really sort of everyone that fits in between that. And the way that it gets defined is as small businesses that are creditworthy, are viable, and should be able to attract funding, either debt or equity funding, but for whatever reason are unable to do that. So there's a huge squeeze on them when it comes to developing their businesses, to hiring more staff, and just the economic prosperity of those businesses. If you dive deeper into the statistics, what's interesting to see is that 9 out of every 10 jobs globally is a job at an SME, at a small business. Defined as having fewer than 250. Well, there's no globally a recognized definition of small business, but the definition that we use is a small business having less than 250 employees. If you go sort of deeper into that, essentially 2 out of every 3 jobs in emerging markets it is also provided by these small businesses. And what we've come to see is that these small businesses are starved of working capital. They're unable to get the capital that they initially need to survive and then to grow and thrive. And that's really the need that we are trying to fulfill. If you speak to our founder, she talks about a story of having met a woman in Ethiopia that was manufacturing shoes. And it was shoes where there was international demand for the product, but ultimately, due to a lack of working capital, the business just wasn't able to scale. It wasn't able to take advantage of that opportunity set. And that's really the need that we are trying to fulfill. We are trying to come in, we are focusing on small businesses where they are typically selling to larger, more creditworthy domestic buyers. So it could be goods or services, but they're providing those goods or services to those larger businesses. And then typically waiting to get paid sort of anywhere from 90 to 120 days. And during that period of time, the small business still needs to make payments or salary payments to staff or wage payments to temporary workforce. They might still need to hire in temporary machinery or temporary equipment to do what they do. There could be taxes payable, GST or VAT payments, and all of that liquidity pressure falls on that small business while they wait for this larger business to pay that invoice. And that's really the product that we are trying to support. We're trying to come in with a factoring product or an invoice discounting product, where we take that invoice from that small business. We will make an advance against that invoice for typically 80% of the face value. And then we take that liquidity pressure on us and we wait for those 90 or 120 days for that buyer to pay back. So that's really what we focus on.
What is it that you're seeking to deliver outside of financial returns? What do your investors expect to see? What is the impact that you all are hoping to produce in the world and to your borrowers?
Right. Yeah, thanks. So just to pick up on what Hendrik was talking about, our theory of change is really that small businesses are the engine of economic growth, that you can provide financing that's tailored to their needs, helps them create good jobs, and fuels inclusive, productive economic growth at the local level. So that's sort of what we were trying to achieve through our investment strategy. We have four goals: financial inclusion, getting money to the small businesses. Then we also wanted to make sure it's doing its job. So the money that gets to the small businesses, is it helping them create jobs? Is it helping them grow their revenue? The third thing that we're measuring is looking at the overall local economic system. Is the effect of our funding having a net positive impact? So we do, developing these long-term partnerships with local financial institutions who have the small businesses as their long-term clients. And fourth, a core interest from us is so gender lens investing. So are we creating more opportunities for women? And we have a pretty robust impact metric matrix. We have been measuring this for 10 years, and we've run surveys for 8. And we collect information not only from the FI level, but also from the small business level to measure things like the size. Since inception, our fund has put $8.5 billion into circulation with the SMEs we finance. And we've done that across 68 countries. The direct impact of the people that we've affected is $16.8 million. So each of the SMEs we fund on average employs 50 people. So you multiply that by 4.9 people per household, and you come up with having an impact of almost 17 million people. And as Hendrik said, the average transaction size is under $5,000.
It's very clear that you guys take the collection of data seriously. And of course, that supports the effort that you guys are doing. I know Sydney is instrumental in all of that work. So, Sydney, perhaps you could help us understand exactly what it is that you guys are doing and how does that translate into the data and ultimately the metrics that you use to evaluate your success.
So just to add a bit more detail around the data collection process for us in our impact, it's a very integral part, um, collecting the surveys and everything. And so the whole process is conducted over several months out of the year, typically between the start of January all the way through to when we launch in June, so very soon. And the way that works is we start off by examining which of our FI partners in our portfolio that will participate in our survey. And then from there, we're able to administer a structured survey to them as well as to their clients. And so the surveys are designed to capture both qualitative and quantitative data on details such as financial performance, business growth, or social outcomes, for example. And so this year we've had 20 countries participating in the survey, and 10 languages as well that we've worked to translate so that everyone who's involved with AGC can participate in the impact we're trying to reach. And so through aligning the surveys with an instrument like SurveyMonkey, we can use this to kind of collect the responses and ensure that the data we do receive helps us track the progress we're trying to work towards and the objective we're trying to reach.
What do you guys think about the synergies between return and impact? How do you think about managing both at the same time? And frankly, what are the returns that your LPs expect?
Yeah. So I'll start with your last question first. And we aim to achieve a 300 basis point return over a risk-free rate, and a risk-free rate for us is defined as as a 2-year treasury. So that's really where we position ourselves. We don't, when we set the fund up, when we launched the fund, the intention was never to provide concessionary capital. We wanted to provide capital on a market related basis, and we wanted to generate a return, a risk adjusted return for our LPs that we felt was commensurate with the risk that we were taking, while obviously demonstrating the impact through all of the processes and the surveys and everything that Sydney has spoken about. I think the impact investing world has shifted. I was looking at a statistic that Gin released recently where they talk, so they've gone through a survey process and the respondents have to select an option of whether or not they believe that impact investing should align with sort of concessionary capital. Should you be satisfied with a lower rate of return simply because it's an impact product? And two years ago, 67%, don't quote me on this, but it was around 66 or 67% of respondents said no. They said that even though you're making an impact investment, it should still generate a rate of return that's commensurate with other financial products that they could invest in. If you fast forward 12 months, it's now 78% of respondents have said that it needs to be a commercially sort of comparable rate of return. So I think the collective mindset of impact investors is shifting. I think there's still a need for catalytic capital. I think there's still a very, very big need for investors that have got pools of money to provide first loss tranches into multi-tranche funds or into other structures. And you have foundations, you have players in the space. You've got people like Kenyath, for example, I think is doing amazing work in that space. But really where we try to position ourselves is by being an impact-minded, impact-first asset manager while generating a rate of return that's commensurate with the risk that we're sort of taking on the portfolio.
That's fantastic. I mean, that is, to my mind, as an investor, that is the framework that everyone should be using for thinking about the the dual intentions of generating impact and generating return. I'm always frustrated, even by the phrase concessionary capital, because let's say I have made the conscious decision to allocate capital to a strategy for a specific return, and I consciously accept whatever rate of return the GP is trying to deliver. There's nothing concessionary about that. I'm not conceding anything, right? I've made that intentional decision, as many people do, as you just said, Hendrik, when they're making allocations of capital into catalytic purposes, right? You're trying to catalyze something. That's not a concession. That's a conscious decision.
No,
And
exactly.
then,
Wow. When people ask me that question, something that I typically answer is when they ask about our returns, rather than answering in adjectives, we provide numbers. So what were our returns?
yeah.
And with a 10-year track record,
Hmm.
then that sort of gets at that question. And some flippant thing that I use sometimes is we don't do concessionary investing and our returns are not concessionary, but we never do concessionary impact. So we keep the bar high in terms of what we're aiming to achieve to meet our investors' expectations of what we say we're
That's,
going to do.
I'm going to steal that, Sam. That's a great
Yeah,
phrase. I like
right. I
that.
like it. I've been
I like
waiting
that.
for years to use it somewhere.
Excellent. I'm glad I could help. So I want to stick with the theme of transparency, but also pivot a bit, because one of the things that struck us at the Impact Evaluation Lab, as we were going through the process of evaluating you, was the ease with which you provided information, and the consistency of the integrity of the information. And I think that immediately struck us as a signal of strength. But I'm really curious to know how you thought about the process of working with us and how that may have even helped strengthen or helped inform you in ways that were beneficial to what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, I think if we think about the accounting standards and how they've evolved through time, there really are two frameworks that exist today. There's the US framework and there's the international framework, and most people would align themselves with one of those frameworks. And it's very easy to compare two different companies, even in two different countries or two different continents, against the framework that exists and the assurances that you would get from external parties like auditors, for example. I think the challenge when it comes to impact measurement and reporting is that there's so many sort of different frameworks that exist
Mm.
today. Simply looking at the frameworks that have emerged in Europe versus the frameworks that have emerged in the US, I don't think there's consistent reporting. I don't think that there's consistency in the way that fund managers or asset managers or anyone in the space really is being assessed. And I think that's really what we value, is the ability to take two different asset managers that might not even be within the same asset class or the same sector, and look at a number which gives you a really good read on
Mm-hmm.
how true they are to what they say they're doing. They've gone through that external verification process with the Impact Evaluations Lab, and it's very easy to interpret the number that you're seeing on the tin.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, Hendrik, very much, because that is one of our intentions and one of the reasons we built the firm. It also speaks to the process by which we created our evaluation framework, which is we reached out to everybody we knew in the impact space, and like you all, I've been in it for quite some time, and made sure that whatever we landed on was consistent with the expectations of the impact community. Doesn't mean we agree with everybody, but I do think everyone would say they understand why we made certain decisions about the methodology. So, guys, thank you. This has been a real pleasure working with you again. I'm thankful for your willingness to take some more time with us.